They have people for that. Those were the 5 words she spat out, laced with a venomous entitlement that could curdle milk. 5 words that dismissed her own disgusting behavior right after letting her dog defecate in the middle of the sprawling, polished floor of Los Angeles International Airport. She turned and vanished into the crowd, a queen abandoning her filth for the peasants to handle. But she had no idea that I was about to become one of those people, the kind who handles karma, not trash. And her final destination was about to get a last-minute, non-negotiable change of plan. If you have ever watched someone act like the world is their personal ashtray and wished you could do something about it, then you are in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up, because you're about to witness a story where petty revenge is elevated to an art form. Justice isn't just served today, it's hand-delivered with a one-way ticket to Consequenceville. Let's dive in. Airports are strange places. They're not really destinations. They're high-stress portals, liminal spaces, filled with the low hum of anxiety, the scent of Cinnabon, and the frantic energy of 1,000 people trying to get somewhere else. I was one of them, navigating the human currents of LAX, my mind already halfway to Tokyo. It was a long flight, a journey I'd been looking forward to, and I was just focused on getting to my gate, finding a seat, and mentally preparing for 11 hours in the sky. That's when the sanitized, orderly world of the terminal was violated. My eyes, following the flow of travelers, snagged on a strange tableau. A woman, dressed in what looked like expensive athleisure wear, was standing with her back to a small, fluffy dog. She was holding her phone up, FaceTiming at a volume that suggested she thought the entire terminal was interested in her conversation. And behind her, the dog, a little white creature that was probably adorable under normal circumstances, was hunched over in that unmistakable, deeply focused posture. It was in the middle of doing its business, right there, on the gleaming white floor. My first thought, giving her the benefit of the doubt, was that she was simply oblivious, lost in her digital world, unaware of the biological reality unfolding just inches behind her. A gentleman nearby, a kindly-looking man in his 60s, clearly had the same thought. He approached her cautiously, as if approaching a wild animal. "Excuse me, miss," he said, his voice polite, respectful. The woman didn't just turn her head snapped around. She didn't look at him. She glared at him. It was a look of pure, unadulterated annoyance, as if he'd just asked to borrow a kidney. Her eyes were cold, her mouth a tight, irritated line. The man visibly recoiled. He gestured meekly. "Your dog," he stammered, pointing a trembling finger at the pup, which was now finishing its final plopping contribution to the LAX floor. The woman's response wasn't verbal. It was a symphony of contempt. She rolled her eyes so hard, I'm surprised they didn't get stuck in the back of her head. Then, with a dismissive flick of her wrist, she turned back to her phone, raising her voice to her FaceTime partner. "Some people," she bellowed, the irony so thick you could taste it, "are just so damned rude." The kind man just melted away. He scurried off, his face flushed with embarrassment, punished for the crime of trying to be a decent human being. The dog finished, shook itself, and looked up at its owner, who was still deep in conversation. Without a second glance at the mess, she started walking. Just walking away, leaving a steaming pile of organic matter in the middle of a major international thoroughfare. The silent, collective shock of the onlookers was a palpable thing. It was a bubble of disbelief. We all just stood there for a second, mouths agape, processing the sheer audacity. Then another hero emerged. A woman, braver than the last, stepped into the offender's path. "You're not going to clean that up?" she asked. Her tone wasn't aggressive. It was pure stunned bewilderment. The dog owner stopped. She looked at the woman who dared question her, then glanced back at the poop, then back at the woman. A smirk played on her lips. And that's when she uttered those 5 fateful words. "They have people for that," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. And with that, she shouldered her designer bag, tugged the leash, and disappeared into the river of travelers, her loud, obnoxious conversation trailing behind her like a plume of toxic smoke. For a moment, nobody moved. We were a small, impromptu community, united in disgust. I found myself standing guard near the pile, a self-appointed biohazard beacon, warning approaching travelers to divert their course. "Watch your step," I'd say, pointing down. The looks on their faces cycled through confusion, then revulsion, then a sort of shared, disappointed understanding. Someone else, bless their heart, had gone to find a maintenance worker, one of those people, this woman so casually referenced, probably a person earning minimum wage, who now had to deal with a problem that a plastic bag and a shred of human decency could have solved in 10 seconds. My internal monologue was a simmering pot of frustration. I'm no stranger to flying with my own dog. I do it often. But I treat it as the immense privilege it is. My dog is meticulously trained. He's quiet, he's calm, and he behaves better than a significant portion of the adult population. He certainly behaves better than that woman, and infinitely better than her poor, untrained dog. The rage I felt wasn't just about the mess, it was about the desecration of that privilege. She was the type of person who ruins things for everyone else. And the worst part? As I later discovered, there is a dedicated, fully equipped pet relief area inside the LAX terminal, past security. It was just 2 gates away from where she let her dog go. 2 gates. A 90-second walk, but of course, that would have required a microscopic level of forethought and consideration. This was a woman who would throw a fast food bag out her car window while sitting 3 feet from an empty garbage can. Eventually, I made my way to my gate, Gate 69A, hoping to leave the whole sordid affair behind me. And there she was. Of course, she was there, sitting proudly, as if holding court. We were on the same flight. We were both going to Tokyo. A wave of second-hand embarrassment washed over me. I travel abroad frequently, and I always feel a pang of cringe when I see fellow Americans behaving badly. But this was a whole new level. This wasn't just being a loud tourist. This was leaving literal feces on the floor of a host country's gateway. Her reign of terror, however, was far from over. Her dog, clearly stressed and agitated, was now yapping at anyone who dared walk past her little kingdom of entitlement. And the woman, she'd moved on from her obnoxious FaceTime call. She was now listening to music, on her phone, without headphones. A tinny, grating beat filled the air around her, a private concert no one had bought a ticket for. It was a cacophony of awfulness. The barking dog, the terrible music, the lingering memory of her public defecation decree. I don't like to throw around the word sociopath, but I was struggling to find another label that so perfectly encapsulated her complete and utter lack of awareness or care for any other living being in the universe. I pictured her life. The car parked across 3 spots in long-term parking, a fresh scratch on the bumper from a child's bike she hit without leaving a note. The trail of miserable service workers she left in her wake every single day, the friends, if she had any, who secretly muted her calls. Everyone else in the gate area was practicing strategic avoidance. They sat as far away as possible, creating a wide, empty buffer zone around her. They buried their faces in books and phones, pretending she didn't exist. But as I stood there, watching her, a different feeling began to bubble up through the disgust. It was a slow-burning anger, a desire for balance, for a little cosmic readjustment. Everyone else was ignoring her. I am not everyone else. A plan, simple and beautiful in its elegance, began to form in my mind. It wasn't premeditated. It was an impulse, forged in the fires of second-hand embarrassment and third-hand disgust. I took a deep breath, straightened my jacket, and walked directly towards her. I sat down in the empty seat right next to her. The air next to her felt greasy, with self-importance. She shot me a sideways glance, her face screwed up in irritation at my proximity. I gave her my most pleasant, helpful-looking smile. "Excuse me?" I began, pitching my voice to be earnest and slightly concerned. "Are you going to London on business?" I picked a random, plausible-sounding destination. Her eyes narrowed. "I'm going to Tokyo," she responded gruffly, annoyed that I had interrupted her one-woman music festival. "Oh," I said, Widening my eyes in mock realization, I leaned in a bit, as if sharing a secret. Oh, wow. Okay, well, you better hurry. They just announced a gate change for that flight. It got moved to Gate 53C. This is the new gate for the London flight. I held my breath. My entire plan hinged on her being exactly the person she had proven herself to be. Arrogant, self-involved, and too important to double-check information. I was banking on the fact that someone who can't be bothered to look at the giant departures board right in front of her face was the perfect mark. For a second, she just stared at me. I could see the gears turning in her head. But it wasn't a calculation of truth. It was a calculation of inconvenience. She didn't doubt me. Why would she? She was the main character, and I was just a helpful NPC in her story. Without a word of thanks, without a glance at the monitor above our heads, which very clearly, in enormous letters, said Tokyo, without noticing that nearly 90% of the people in our gate area were Japanese, she bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. In a flurry of huffing and puffing, she grabbed her oversized purse, yanked her poor yapping dog, and scrambled to her feet. She stormed out of the gate area, a woman on a mission, dragging her baggage and her bad attitude behind her. I watched her go, a slow smile spreading across my face, and as her tinny music faded down the hall, I had a thought. Some people, I mused to myself, are just so damned rude. She didn't even thank me for my life-saving travel tip. Now, for those of you not intimately familiar with the Byzantine layout of the Tom Bradley International Terminal at LAX, let me paint you a picture. Our flight to Tokyo was at Gate 69A. The 50 series gates, where I had sent her on her wild goose chase, are not just a few steps away. They are on the other side of the next terminal. It's a significant walk, a good 10 to 15-minute journey at a brisk pace, especially when dragging luggage and a reluctant dog. And the cherry on top of this beautiful petty sundae? There is no Gate 53C. It doesn't exist. I felt a tiny, fleeting pang of guilt. I imagined her arriving, red-faced and panting, at the 53-gate concourse, only to find no C. I imagined her flagging down some poor, unsuspecting gate agent and berating them, demanding to know where her flight was. I pictured that agent's confused face as they patiently explained that there is no 53C and that the Tokyo flight was, and always had been, boarding back at Gate 69A, all the way across the terminal. The guilt passed. It was replaced by a serene sense of cosmic justice. Boarding for our actual flight began about 20 minutes later. I walked down the jet bridge, found my seat, and settled in. The minutes ticked by. The flight attendants did their final checks. The cabin doors were closed and armed. As the plane pushed back from the gate, I scanned the seats around me. No sign of her. No sign of her dog. The only sound was the gentle hum of the engines and the quiet chatter of passengers. There was no barking. There was no tinny music. There was only peace. My original intention wasn't necessarily to make her miss her flight. It was just to give her a moment of panic, a frantic, stressful sprint through the airport, as a small karmic tax for her behavior. But her own self-absorption and rudeness had turned my little prank into a full-blown catastrophe for her. Her missing the flight wasn't my action. It was the consequence of her character. As the plane climbed towards the sky, leaving the lights of Los Angeles behind, I wondered if I went too far. Missing an international flight is a huge, expensive, and stressful ordeal. Delta only has one flight to Tokyo from LAX each day. Whoops! But then I thought about the maintenance worker, on their hands and knees, cleaning up a mess that wasn't theirs. I thought about the kind man she glared at, the shocked woman she sneered at, the entire gate of people she subjected to her noise. And I decided, no, the punishment fit the crime. She wanted someone else to handle her problems. And in the end, she got her wish. She was now someone else's problem. What's the most satisfying act of petty revenge you've ever witnessed or dished out? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you enjoyed this story of karmic justice, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss another tale of righteous revenge. Maybe she can rebook on another airline. I hear they have people for that.